the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Whether it is lights and fireworks on Fountain Square in 2011, or as a train set beneath a family Christmas tree in 1927, no time of the year creates stronger memories than Christmas. But fundamentally, this holiday is grounded in religious experience. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Christmas Day only falls on Sunday every 6 years or so. I can't figure it out. On this Christmas morning, we are going to explore various religious perspectives on Christmas. In part 2 of the program, I'm going to rerun a wonderful segment from 2006 that explored the intersection of German-Jewish immigration, the drive for assimilation, Christmas, and the identity of being an American. But we begin this morning with two Christian ministers. Father Greg Friedman is a Franciscan friar who's the pastor of St. Francis Seraph Church in Over the Rhine. He also is a longtime writer, video producer, and radio host at St. Anthony Messenger Press, now called Franciscan Media. And Dr. Gary Hayles is the pastor of Tabernacle Baptist Church in Lincoln Heights. Welcome to Newsmakers. I want to assure everybody that we are taping this ahead. Right. You two at this very moment are probably, when people are watching this, are probably preaching. Or you better be, or something like that. So very good. Father Greg, let's start out by just talking. At this point, I don't know if you've written your homily for Christmas morning yet. What's your basic insight out of your tradition of the significance and the meaning of Christmas?
As a Franciscan, we go back to our founder, St. Francis of Assisi, back in the 13th century. And he was a man so in love with Jesus and was so convinced that God had done this wonderful, wonderful thing to be born into humanity, to become human, to become one of us, that Francis captured that joy and love. And we want to bring that as good news to people in this season. And that's why we have the tradition that St. Francis really helped to popularize of the Christmas nativity. And he did it back in the 13th century to try to get people to wake up in their time to this great truth of Christ being born into our world.
And we'll come back to that in a minute because I want to make reference to how that connects to Cincinnati too. Dr. Hayles, you're coming out of a different tradition. You're coming out of the Baptist tradition. How would you express the significance of Christmas?
I think one of the greatest things that we're focusing on now is the celebration of the actual birth and what that meant in reference to God giving His Son. And so now the birth is not only just a life experience that we have a newborn child that's going to be the Savior of the world, but we get to see an exemplary God giving. And so we can't have a self-centered spirit or a selfish spirit in this season. It has to be a giving spirit because of what God did through His Son by giving the world a Savior. So that celebration aspect that we go to initially, we're overjoyed by that whole experience.
And what on Christmas morning, in your congregation in Tabernacle Baptist Church, what's the service like? What goes on?
It's a very high-spirited sense of praise and worship of that celebration mode again, and with great expectation that not only we're going to celebrate this birth, but we know a life has happened now, and because of that life, we're going to have some great things happen to us out of that experience. So on Sunday morning, particularly this Christmas, we're going to be in overdrive in celebration because of what God has done again through this Son Jesus and giving us our Lord. And so we have, our whole faith has increased, everything has increased.
Are there certain hymns that come out of the Baptist tradition related to Christmas, or are they we would all recognize the hymns?
Oh, I think we would all recognize the hymns, or Holy Night. We would all recognize those things. Oh, come all ye faithful. We would recognize those as symbols of that giving attribute of God again, that He's done this through His Son. So it's increased our faith, increased our joy, our peace, and to be able to share and give at great levels because of this excitement.
And in your church, what will Christmas morning be like? Or is it midnight mass?
Well, we have a mass on Christmas Eve, and we especially do a candlelight procession to our nativity scene in the church. But then very much like Dr. Gary said, there's a lot of joy, a lot of enthusiasm, and another thing that he and I were talking about before we went on the air here, that there's a lot of folks who come to this day, the Christmas celebration. It's maybe one of the few times as Christians that they might come to church. They may worship and pray in other ways, but it's a time where a lot of families and a lot of guests will come into to our church, and we want to try to make them welcome and let them know that this can be a church home for them as well.
And because of that experience, if this is their first time coming during the year, this could change their whole life. And so by seeing us celebrate this great occasion, it's going to be effective. And so they'll be impacted in a great way.
So from a pastor's point of view, a pastoral point of view, the fact that people don't come every Sunday but maybe come on Christmas, not a problem for you?
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. Because this one time may be that whole change their whole next year, that they'll be a continual attendee, a parishioner, or whatever. And so this experience alone can make the difference in their life.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned was the Franciscan tradition of the creche, of the nativity scene. I have some footage of the Western Southern Christmas crib in Cincinnati, which everybody knows. It's now up in Eden Park. But this is film from 1939. This is color film from 1939. It's very early, which is the first year that it was displayed. It was down in Lytle Park. Talk a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more about the nativity scene in the Franciscan tradition.
Well, in the 13th century, in probably a world very much like ours, there's a lot of violence, a lot of economic distances between rich and poor, and it was a time when maybe folks had forgotten that great truth of God's Son being born into the world. And so Francis was a very visual guy. He understood poetry, he understood ways to make faith come alive for people. And so he took this idea of creating a live nativity, which I think had been done before him, but he really popularized it. He created in a cave a scene like we see here, and very popular. It caught on, and really I think he gave it the popularity that made it spread throughout the world. So it's real close to Franciscan heart. We have a live nativity at St. Francis Seraph over the Rhine. Will be open into the beginning of January, and we want to really let folks experience it with the animals, with the wonder in the eyes of the children. It's a great time.
What about in your church? Do you have a nativity scene?
No, we don't have a nativity scene, but Sundays leading up to this great occasion that we celebrate the birth, it's constant, whether it's preaching or teaching or singing, it's constant leading up to this great occasion. And because it's not just what the occasion has done for this one moment, but our lives now, we have a Savior, not only be a baby, but he's going to grow up and really save our lives. So all during this season, leading up to this great occasion, we have all of those type of things going on.
So it's really focused on the Word.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
I think comes out of your tradition.
Right.
And whereas the Catholic tradition, there's a concept of sacrament, there's a concept of visual in a different way than I think operates in.
That's right. But we also really want to preach the heart of the gospel message.
Most definitely.
And as you say, we don't concentrate just on the infant, because these stories that we hear at Christmas time are really the stories that will lead up to Christ's death, his love given out on the cross.
That's
right. And it's all connected.
Exactly.
Both of you you actually have congregations that are in different places and different size congregations, but Dr. Hayles, your congregation is in Lincoln Heights.
Yes.
How large?
A little over 1,000.
A little over 1,000. And are people who are members of your congregation, are there significant members of your congregation who are under stress this time of the year because of the economic situation that we're facing? Is this a time where reaching out to members of your congregation in a special way is really important, where it's not just this tradition thing, but it's what's going on right now?
It's not focused on the tradition at all. I think the whole aspect, again, of celebrating the Lord's birth and us coming together to celebrate not just this incident, but to what caused the incident. What caused this great occasion is a loving, a caring, a faithful God that thought enough of us to be like us and to come like us. And so that's what the whole aspect of the celebration is. But I think during this time, like Father Greg was saying, of distress and pressure, this is a time of joy and peace. In spite of those obstacles, this is an opportunity to experience another level of joy that you won't reflect on your everyday circumstances. Right?
What about your congregation? How large?
We have less than 100 in our congregation. And so, and a vast kind of spread. You know, we have very rich folks, we have very poor folks. Every Sunday we'll have street folks that will come in. We have folks touched by all sorts of needs. And we're in the midst of Over the Rhine, so there's a lot of service that's going on, both from our congregation, from other churches, and we have also the blessing of folks from the Jewish tradition who come down and help us serve a meal at this time of year. And so I think folks in the inner city, like anywhere else, are folks that have faith, that have high expectations for their families. They want to make a beautiful Christmas for their families. And I think at the heart of it, they grasp what the Christmas message is all about. We all, as we all people of faith do. And as Pastor Gary was saying, you want to really go to the heart of that mystery. And I always try to touch folks with the idea that all the stuff you're doing, the stress, the buying gifts, the thinking about that, find a way to make that a spiritual thing. So if you're really stressed out about buying gifts, remember it's about love.
That's right.
You're going to choose a gift based on love. The same thing with the generosity of this time. You know, where does it come from? It goes back to the generosity of God.
That's right. And no matter what level of generosity it is, whether you're giving a gift to a friend or a stranger, you're displaying that whole aspect of that generosity God did for us in giving His Son. So you can't have a self-centeredness type of spirit, a selfish spirit. You really want to have a giving spirit when you really think of the awesome power that you know, by giving His Son to us, that we're even here talking today about it and sharing some good news on this broadcast.
So I'm just about out of time, but you know, it made reference at the beginning of that Christmas tree in a family home with a train underneath. Does a lot of this grow out of your own personal experiences? Christmas special time for you growing up?
Oh, most definitely. I'm the baby of 7, and so Christmas time was big in our family, and just going to sleep on Christmas Eve, we just waited in great anticipation that something different was going to happen on Christmas Day. So yes, great.
I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Merry
man.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Have a wonderful Christmas Day with your congregation. Stay tuned after the break. A conversation with historian Gary Zola about the very unique role of Christmas celebrations within the Cincinnati Reformed Jewish community.
Was sent by my parents to Cincinnati to participate in the Christmas parties. 2 solid weeks of parties, morning, noon, and night, without stopping. It was almost a Victorian system.
It never occurred to me that Jewish people weren't supposed to have a Christmas tree. When I went to Walnut Hills and made Jewish friends, they were all really amazed that I had a Christmas tree. And I remember they would come to my house and help trim it because they had never trimmed a Christmas tree before. As obviously I've matured, I understand that this was really a very German Jewish thing in Cincinnati.
Welcome back. In the 1840s and 50s, tens of thousands of immigrants from German-speaking Central European states settled in Cincinnati. Jews were one element of that influx. The mid-19th century German Jewish community became the foundation upon which Reform Judaism was founded and built by great leaders like Rabbis Isaac Mayer Wise and Max Lilienthal. Plum Street Temple and Hebrew Union College are critical institutions in the world of Reform Judaism. A new documentary entitled These Are Jews by Ruth Goldman, who grew up in Cincinnati and now lives in Buffalo, explores the world of Cincinnati German Jews. The underlying theme of the documentary is the implications of assimilation, and one thread focuses on the role of Christmas celebrations among Cincinnati Reform German Jews.
Every Christmas, we were invited to the home of relatives of my stepfather to sit around their Christmas tree and they all wished each other Merry Christmas, and they passed out presents, and they were acting as if this was their holiday, and they were all very happy to celebrate the season. It was uncomfortable for me, but all right, why not? They were relatives. Until I had children. And the last time I went was when my first child was an infant. When we were invited the next year, I didn't want to hurt their feelings, but I had to tell them no, that this year he would be old enough to understand, and that he just wouldn't be able to catch on to how a Jewish family would be going to another Jewish family's house to celebrate Christmas.
I am joined now by Dr. Gary Zola, the Executive Director of the Jacob Marcus Center for American Jewish Archives at Hebrew Union College. Gary, welcome back.
Thanks, Dan.
This is an amazing, intriguing, surprising documentary, and I think it would be very surprising for people who aren't Jewish and maybe don't know that much about Judaism. What's your reaction? I know you showed this at Hebrew Union College. People came and talked. What's your reaction?
Well, I look at it as a historian, and it's very interesting, this whole phenomenon. It's really a reflection of the unique role that Christmas plays in American culture. When you think about it, Dan, Christmas really is the only holiday of so many holidays that have a place in the American culture that has both secular component and a distinctly religious component. In a certain sense, this national holiday, this federal holiday, is really two separate holidays with the same name, Christmas. Christmas, the holiday of gift-giving, good tidings, warm feelings, humanity, caring, family. Those are values that every American would share. On the other hand, at the very same time, it is distinctly also a religious holiday. They have the same name, and they move back and forth between these two components seamlessly. So it's not a surprise that Jews want to participate in those, if you will, civil religious qualities. But along with it comes the sense that, my goodness, you're also marking the holiday of another religion. So it's been a very interesting struggle. And the German Jews in the 19th century, not just in Cincinnati, Dan, but really wherever there were large German Jewish settlements, they were familiar with this holiday from Germany, which is where the Christmas tree and many of the American components to the holiday really came to this country. You find this phenomenon occurring.
A lot of people are interviewed in this, and a couple of people we've heard from already, and at the end of the show you'll hear a couple others. Many of them would be people who come from very prominent families in Cincinnati, and people either know them or they know of them. One of my questions, though, is this, the people who are interviewed, all are people who are my age or older,
Right.
And is this something that is still strong? Is this something that is changing? What would we find in Jewish homes today?
Well, again, you're going to find a diversity. First of all, the kind of phenomenon that is highlighted on this particular documentary is, in a sense, on the wane, as you sort of heard from that interview, meaning after the era of ethnicity, the growth of strong ethnic and religious identification in the post-1970s, 80s, and so forth, that sort of commemoration is falling out of disfavor. And so you're right, it's a generational issue in that regard. You'll see the folks who are in their 70s and 80s, some of them who remember that from childhood. Some of them still hold special feelings towards it, and some of them even feel badly that it's not quite as popular a custom as it once was. And so you do have it moving, Jews today moving away from that and feeling it, they want to reassert a more unique identity with Jewish life, and the Christmas tree and Christmas celebrations will be left out. On the other hand, there's a great deal of intermarriage in America today, and so you do have Jews and non-Jews marrying That's a reality in American life. And in those homes, it's understandable that you will find Jews and non-Jews who want to try to maintain parts of both holidays. Now, there's a great deal of controversy on this topic. Most religious thinkers would like a home to be unified under one religious system. But what religious leaders and thinkers might want isn't always what occurs in a house. And so you will
Because there's
find,
marriages and children, you got to do it.
That's right, exactly. So it is really a remarkable thing. And you know, just recently you may have heard Mr. O'Reilly made a comment at the beginning of December that even he was trying to advocate the idea that why should we stop saying Merry Christmas out in the streets? Why not say it? That's what it is. And in doing so, he says, well, even the Jews love Christmas. And that, of course, caused a firestorm because, on the one hand, there are elements of the Christmas holiday in America that we all love. After all, wasn't it this famous cantor's son, Israel Baleen? We know him as Irving Berlin, who wrote the most popular song.
Which is?
White Christmas.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know so many Jews who say to me, I love the music of Christmas. And people love that American feeling. After all, we're part and parcel of the fabric here. At the same time, how do we hold on to a uniquely Jewish identity in America? It's that tension.
You know, a lot of this, in the documentary, it becomes one of the themes that's played off, is it's the relationship between people of German Jewish background and Eastern European Jewish background.
Right.
And seeing these as really very different worlds.
That's correct.
Is that gulf been bridged? Has that been changing?
Yeah, that's really been bridged. After the closing of immigration in the mid-1920s, really almost finally in 1930, when these laws that were set into place shut down Jewish immigration from Eastern Europe, which would of course have very calamitous impact with regard to the impending Holocaust. We have a period of amalgamation. And so Jews have married one another, and those separate communities have dissipated. They're largely just a memory.
Yeah. There's still these distinctive traditions, though, Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox.
Absolutely.
Those are still real.
Absolutely, definitely. And you still have residual hints or traces of that.
What does this, in a broader sense, what does this story and the story of Jews in America, and you were on the 350th commission that celebrated this a couple of years ago nationally, what does this tell us about the issue of immigration and assimilation in America? Because there's a great deal of concern that new immigrants are coming to America who don't hold traditional American traditions, culture, maybe from other religions. Paul Knitter and I were talking about Buddhists and people from Islam and Muslims, Hindus. What does this story tell us? What's the Jewish story tell us about assimilation in a larger sense?
Well, I think one answer would be, Dan, that the American Jew is unique in all of diaspora history because of the unique nature of America. This is an open society and a welcoming society, and that's fundamentally what it has been for the Jew as well as for other minorities. And what we learn from this is that the minority cultures wish to participate in the larger general society and also preserve these ethnic traditions. And the Jews are particularly, I mean, after all, it's a 3,000 plus year old tradition. And so you have, what this is this fascinating, uniquely American phenomenon of the American Jew who wants very badly and has been a part of this society from the very beginning, wants to participate. How does one do that without being taken up entirely and then disappear? How do we hold that almost very difficult tension between these two elements.
And that is a wonderful tension, but I think it's in a time of great immigration, when people seem to be very worried about this, I think that your comment, America is a very powerful magnet. It's a very special society.
Yes.
And that's the hopeful thing about
yes,
this.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And you know, I'm very positive, as you know, about Jewish life in this country.
And I'm just about out of time. So if you would like to order a copy of this documentary, it can be found at andthesearejews.com. Okay, www.andthesearejews.com. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. If this time of the year can encourage desires to reach beyond ourselves with gestures of welcoming and kindness, curiosity and awe, it has served its purpose to establish a model for how we should strive to live every day of our lives. We close with some thoughts from two members of Cincinnati's German Jewish leadership. Have a good week.
It's important to be Jewish, but it's also important to be part of the American system, be assimilated. That was deeply embedded into to me as a kid.
I am an American first, but I am a Jew.